All right, we are live, and I'm very excited to bring you all today's guest. And we also have a guest co-host today, Bianca Léger. On today's episode, we interview a mom, author of Vinyasa Yoga Made Simple, DJ, teacher, minister, psychedelic therapist, community organizer, life coach, podcaster, and entrepreneur. And Nosara Yoga Institute master educator. She's been a yoga teacher since 2002 and is the owner of Sage Yoga and Wellness and also Sorts Meditation. She also hosts the Love Service Wisdom podcast, and since 2020 has been a ketamine therapist at Boise Ketamine Clinic. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Marisa Radha Weppner.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Bianca. It's a pleasure to be here. When you say welcome to the Winner Circle, I want to be like, yes, I made it.
Do a victory lap.
Yeah. Welcome to the Winner Circle.
We did it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the goal for the name is, I feel so often in society, people see others that are very successful, like yourself, and they see all your accolades, all the things you've been up to, and they think, well, of course she can do that. That's her. But I'm here. And what it just takes is a shift of mindset to recognize that we could all be a winner. And it starts with the choice of moving forward in the direction of where we wish to go, and embracing the process rather than being so destination oriented. When I get this job, when I get this relationship, when I get this house, when I get this, etc., I'll be happy. No, it's the process. That's where the sweetness lies. It's the song on the way to that journey. And as we move forward on that path of must, maybe our destination changes, because when we go on that path of must, when we listen to heart, doors open, many doors open that otherwise would not have been there, and new paths emerge. And I'm excited on this show to explore the many paths that you've explored and journeyed on your hero's journey.
Thank you. Yeah. Happy to share anything you want to ask. You go for it. Nothing too personal. You can just dig in, dive in. I'll share any parts of it.
Right on. I look forward to this journey. So there's a lot of chaos going on globally right now, and that's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is designed to uplift, inspire, and empower. So the first question is a really light question, and that is, Radha, what do you love about your world right now?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that is my home. I love my home. I feel really grateful that I own a home. I own a home in Boise, Idaho, which is like a super hot real estate market right now, where my home, which isn't the greatest home, is worth a lot of money and probably increased in price like 100% in the past couple of years. And because of the pandemic, I stopped traveling as much and spent a lot more time at my home over the past year. And, so have just felt so much more connected to place, which for me, growing up, we moved homes once a year. We moved schools once a year. And so I don't have that. Like, I don't have that in my background. I don't have like a home I can return to, like a family home, things like that. And so having it now and having created it for myself, and I love it, and I'm always kind of dialing it in and fixing it more, and gardening and doing yard work and, organizing and decorating or redecorating, organizing more. It just feels really good. So I feel very blessed that I have a home. And I love this home that I'm in. And I love too, having been given an opportunity to root down into it even more. So that's a little one that comes to mind first, that I'm incredibly grateful for, especially as I watch, peers and colleagues, friends of mine that are the same age, that are very parallel in their lives, that didn't buy a home earlier, and now they can't, and how difficult that is. I've witnessed that a lot. So I know I don't take it for granted that I have that.
That's so beautiful. And it's such a reminder too, that we need that feeling of being grounded if we just want to thrive or feel safe in our space. Yeah. I'm really glad for you. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, grounding was a big message of the last year. Again, even just with like literally putting my hands in the soil and landscaping. One of my favorite things to do is weed whack. You call it something different in Canada. What do you call weed whacking?
I think
Mm,
we still call it weed whacking, Bianca.
No, there's a second term.
I don't
It'll
know.
come to you.
My
Maybe
first
it'll come
language
to
is
me.
French. I'm of little help here.
Okay. Well, if I remember, I'll maybe it'll ping into my mind. But just simple like manual labor tasks like that are very grounding to me, and I enjoy doing them. I enjoy doing them because you can see the fruits of your labor so quickly. You know, like when I'm hedging or when I'm edging, it's like, there it is. There's the straight line.
Mm. Do you grow any plants like fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, I have a big garden. There's lots of greens. It's mostly kale, collards, chard, lettuces, things like that.
Yeah, that's special, that connection. I look up to that. I'm gonna get there.
There's a lot of failures too. There's a lot of plants that don't make it. And in Boise, it's been really hot. I mean, we've had a month of 100-degree plus weather. And so that's just been a lot harder on my plants. Many things have browned and lived with their life cycle quicker than I thought that they would
Yeah,
because of the heat.
it's such a learning process. It's like, well, I didn't get that education growing up. So to take care of plants, and it's also like so empowering because we're like learning to be more self-sustainable. Really seems like the right alley. It's a beautiful practice.
Yeah, it gives me a lot. It gives me a lot. And it's certainly an area that I'm not proficient in. I definitely feel like I'm a sea gardener, let's say, a horticulturist.
Yeah, we all start somewhere.
Yeah.
So, other than your gardening, what are some other foundational ways that you ground yourself?
Walking, hiking, chanting, a good diet, baths, saunas, sleeping well. I would say also just like clearing energy when it comes up, you know, like communicating with people versus keeping things in.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I've got a lot of ways to ground.
Yeah,
Mhm.
those are all amazing practices. I use those as well. It's still interesting though, because I feel like it seems like being grounded is really like that essential part. And sometimes it's hard even for me to figure out what I need exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like learning about that. But there's so many tools.
Yeah, well, even that, just having that question that you know that, Bianca, like, what do I need? To be able to ask yourself that, like when I'm feeling ungrounded or edgy or depressed or activated or depleted, what do I need?
Mhm.
What do I need? Just asking yourself that. Maybe it's something simple like a glass of water or to eat
Actually,
a
yeah.
snack.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like tending to our inner garden, our bodies need. But
Mm,
it's such a practice to actually hear what it's saying and to understand the messages. It's like learning a new language.
or clearing away the noise. Like I feel like the messages are always there. We just are like we're not dialed to that station internally, staticky. And so how can we fine tune the dial so that we know, like we know immediately or more quickly when we need some kind of resource.
Mhm. So, one of the tools that I've used to help with my self inquiry was yoga. And I know that's a big tool of yours. And we share the same teachers, Don and Amba Stapleton from the Nosara Yoga Institute, who are very big in the self inquiry process. Um, can you kind of explore your history with Don and Amba and just your journey into yoga and how so many of the learnings that you have brought to the table to us so far have originated from that yoga base?
Absolutely, 100%, fully. My life has been so informed by yoga completely. And I'm like, how long do I want to make this story? I came to yoga in my, as like 19, 20, because I was on my spiritual journey. I had a moment when I was 15 that was really difficult, that I was needing to integrate, and I didn't have the language integration at the time. I didn't know that was what I was doing or seeking, but I was seeking guidance on what does it mean to be human? What's the nature of reality? Like what's out there? And so I was studying, all we had then, this was like the mid 90s, was like books, like used bookstores, right? Google didn't exist. So I would find books, old books of different teachers from the East mostly, some from the West, like Alan Watts and philosophy, kind of piecing together, exploring the nature of the self, essentially. And I would hear about yoga in that, but I didn't really know what yoga was. I had like the classic, I don't know, like someone sitting in lotus posture kind of image. Or at that time, it was mostly like older women who were practiced in the 60s, 70s. It wasn't like it is today. And so I first learned yoga from Richard Hittleman's 28-day exercise plan, which is a yoga book that was written in 1969. That was a home practice book. And so my yoga journey started by myself at home out of a book. And I came to it from this, I already had that inquiry of like, what is the self, right? And so yoga didn't come from like, I want to get fit or I want to be healthy. It was, yoga seems to be talked about in these spiritual paths. What is it? That was how I stepped into it. And I got that book, and it was 15 minutes of a home practice each day. And I was someone who was very unembodied. Like I didn't play sports. I didn't pay attention to my body. I didn't exercise. I didn't think about what I ate. Like probably most of us teenagers don't, I think. So then when I started my yoga practice, I began to notice I was noticing my body more. And I began to notice, I was in school for psychology too. So I was studying the mind in that way in college. And I was noticing how after just a little bit of practice, I was thinking there was a correlation between, well, I seem calmer, or I seem more aware of what I'm eating. And actually my habits are kind of changing. And I wasn't even trying to change my habits, but the only thing that has changed is I started to do a little bit of yoga. Well, isn't that interesting, as Don and Amba would say. And then from there, I started to take a class at the university. And I did that for a couple of years. And my teachers were peers. They were students also, and they had gone to the Shivananda ashram in the Bahamas. I was going to school in Florida. And so I was taking yoga from people that were my age, right? And so then when I graduated with my psychology degree, I just took yoga to practice through college. When I graduated, I thought to myself, okay, well, you've got to continue your learning. If you could do something for the rest of your life that you did just because you liked doing it, what would you do? And I asked myself that question, and I was like, okay, well, think about all the experiences you've had in college. Which one did you like the most? And I thought, well, if I'm honest, I liked my yoga practice the most. I liked the way it made me feel. And I liked that I could see it was a gateway into deeper layers of myself, because I was interested in psychology. So it seems like this really interesting bridge into the self through practicing yoga. And I didn't know how or why, but I had experienced that. So I thought, well, if I was a yoga teacher, like Eric and Isabel, those are my teachers, I could help people work on themselves, and they wouldn't even really know that they were working on themselves. Like I didn't know. And so then I decided to get a yoga teacher training, and I wanted to go to India and travel and be like bohemian hippie wanderer for like a year and go all over. And I had planned a whole trip to India for 2002, for January 2002, I was going to travel there. But then right before was September 11th, 2000, which was, or 2001, which was 9/11. So a couple months before, I was going to go to India by myself with 9/11. And then it was like, things were different. Like it didn't feel like I could just say, bye, mom and dad, I'm going to India by myself for a year. You might not hear from me. So my main intention with going there was to learn to become a yoga teacher. So I did a Google search that was international yoga training, and Costa Rica came up, and the Nosara Yoga Institute came up right away. And I looked into it, and I just decided that was the place I was going to go. If I could still just travel and it would feel like safer, and closer and a little easier, and I could still go there by myself, I was going to go there. So I went that January of 2002 and just fell in love with Don and Amba and their style of self-awakening yoga and self-inquiry. And it was perfect, like everything that I ever would have wanted for my own self. It felt like going to like higher education of how to be the best human possible. I was learning from Don and Amba and their style of, again, self-inquiry. You're learning to question the nature of yourself and have a deeper relationship with what is my body telling me, so I can know how to resource and what's coming up and to process through things in their training. So I just loved them so much. I remember just wanting Don to be my guru, which he's not the kind of like guru kind of teacher. It's you're your own guru, you're your own teacher. Feeling a little disappointed by that I couldn't be adopted and live there. But I did go back a year later and live there in Nosara and worked at the Institute and got a closer relationship with Don and Amba. And then I did my advanced teacher training there. And then which was another 100 hours. And then I did my pranasage training there. And then I went back and assisted with a training in 2015. And I've always just stayed in touch and loved them so much. And then when they closed the Institute because they wanted to retire in 2016, that's when they made me a 1,000-hour Nosara Yoga Master Educator, which I think they gave to a few of their students, maybe like 20 or so over the years that had been with them for so long, which for me was just such a deep honor. And then I was just with them again in April. I just saw them a few months ago, which was really touching and wonderful and beautiful. And another part of the story, so I didn't get to go to India when I really originally wanted to go, and I'd never gone, right? And a few years ago, 2019 was my 40th birthday, and Don and Amba had retired and they were traveling, and they were leading a group with their teacher, Amrit Desai from Kripalu Yoga. So our lineage comes from Kripalu, Swami Kripalu. They were leading a retreat or co-leading with Amrit Desai in Rishikesh, like a 3-week training. And I got to go to India for the first time with Don and Amba, our teachers, and their teacher, Amrit Desai, for my 40th birthday and spend all that time with them. So I finally made it and I got to go with them.
What a gift.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Oh my God. I'm amazed by all of it. I can only imagine, like, I'm curious about the amount of evolution that happened from your beginnings of studying yoga with that culture, and after all this experience, when I think of yoga, I think of that image of like the inner pilgrimage, like related to like the Indian mystic teachings. Like you can do a real pilgrimage outside, or you can do the pilgrimage within. And I think maybe that's a bit what yoga is like exploring all the inner parts of ourselves. And I wonder about what the biggest transformation you've seen in yourself from when you started the yoga to like later on.
It's funny because I feel like it's hard for me to have a outside perspective lens on myself. I think in my 20s, I thought I was a lot further along than I was. Okay. And even into my 30s.
Okay.
I was way more confident probably than I should have been. Or thought I just knew more about myself than I should have. And I remember this moment like 39, 40, especially 40, realizing how much more of my shadow I wasn't even aware of. And so I'm 42 now, so it's been a couple of years. So I feel like just in the past couple of years, have I really gone deeper into myself? Because I think because of my childhood, how I was raised, there was a fortress in there, a fortress that I was locked out of. And so now a lot of my work, like I just joined Peter Levine's somatic experiencing practitioner training, and that works with trauma through the body, and it just like dovetails so perfectly, especially with the Kripalu self-awakening yoga of sensation, self, inquiry, slowing things down, discharging, processing things through. That I'm able to just see myself way more clearly, just even the past couple of years, because it's all in the body, basically, which we know. Like our whole self, our whole history, everything is in the body. Our body is telling us all of the time what's really going on below the conscious level of the mind that we're pretty locked out of. We can't even see. And so I'm really excited about like this next phase of my learning. It's just been so invaluable to witness it in play, people's trauma, my trauma, when we get activated, when we shut down, how to come back out of that. And it is the yogic practices of just breath, of just feeling, of maybe moving the body, all the somatic pieces that are tied into it. Yeah, I'm just so grateful that I received yoga, especially from the teachers that I had, that Derek and I had at such a young age, because it was so informative about myself. Even then, like I was taking it at the level I was able to, which I know was helpful. Yeah.
Beautiful. Such a wise thing you hear of like realizing just how much you don't know. Every time you learn something, you realize that you didn't know it. It's very, very humbling, this whole evolution thing.
And there's more and more.
So Donna and Amba, they played a significant role in your evolution. Let's take a moment to examine some other mentors and helpers that have left an impact on you, and what were your key takeaways learned from them that you've incorporated into your being today?
So other teachers that I have
that have left a notable impact on your journey. And what were your key takeaways?
Two that are coming to mind, really interestingly, both came to me while I was in Nosara doing my 200-hour teacher training. Somebody loaned me the book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And that was transformative, right? So it was one of those books that still to this day, I'm giving away. It's like, oh, you're beginning to do your work. You need to read the Four Agreements. You need to read the Four Agreements. So that's foundational, the Four Agreements. He does an amazing job of, for a lot of people, for the first time, helping them realize they have beliefs or programs that maybe aren't true. And how did they get there? And how do you work with them? And then the Four Agreements too, just so simply, let's see if you can remember them. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Be impeccable with your word. Always do your best, right? So that, and then since 2008, I've been going to Teotihuacan, which is outside of Mexico City, which is an ancient Toltec site that he talks about in the Four Agreements. And one of my teachers, Lee McCormick, was a student of Don Miguel Ruiz. And Lee has taught me in the lineage of Don Miguel Ruiz, the Toltec lineage, how to use that site as a place of transformation as the Toltecs designed it. So I do a lot of retreat work there almost annually. So Don Miguel and the Toltec lineage is a big one. And then also at my yoga teacher training, right before I went to Costa Rica, I was in Vancouver, Canada, and found in an old bookstore, like I like to find my teachers at the time, I got an old copy of Be Here Now. And I brought that with me down there. So I read Be Here Now for the first time. And Ram Dass is another one of my great loves and great teachers, someone who I've just, from that moment of reading Be Here Now, had such an affinity for. And over the years, would read a lot of his books and listen to his recordings and videos, and you know, him being really the great American spiritual teacher, the first great American modern spiritual teacher, and such a grandfather for many of us in the beginning of our journeys, or wherever we are in our journeys. Oh, here's a picture of me and Ram Dass right here. So I got to meet him in 2018, which was such a treat and a delight and an amazing experience, where that was always like, for me, meeting Ram Dass would be like meeting the president, right? Like, how would I ever get into the White House?
Yeah.
And I knew he had his retreats. So it was like, I'll never be able to go to a Ram Dass retreat. They're always sold out. They cost a lot of money. It can never happen. And I had a new partner in 2018, end of 2017. We were forming a relationship, and we came into the relationship both loving Ram Dass. And so that was something that we would talk about in our relationship or share about together or whatever. And then he got to go to Maui to record him to make the album East Forest and Ram Dass. And I remember him talking. I remember when he first said, I might go to Maui to record Ram Dass. And I said, that's definitely going to happen. Just like that. And I said, and when you go, I'm going with you. So these are the dates that we can make it happen where I can go with you. And we did. We went there together. And that picture was right after he had been recorded the second time, and we were in his study overlooking the ocean. And we're just eye gazing there. It's just like total drishti eye gaze love bomb transmission in that moment, in that picture. He was just so bright and full of love and so giving, so generous, like loving awareness. His main mantra was just oozes out of him over and over again. So since that moment in 2018, I got to spend 3 more times with him that were really special. And we got to go to 2 of his retreats in Maui and be with him. The final one right before he passed, a couple days before he left, or weeks before he left his body. But also when he returned, he'd been on Maui for about 20 years and not left because of his health. And there's the Neem Karole Baba ashram. Neem Karole Baba is his teacher. So this ashram in Taos was built in the late 70s, early 80s. And Ram Dass had bought and created this like marble Hanuman Murti statue, like this big, grand Hanuman Murti in the early 80s to the Taos ashram. And all these years since then, they've been building a mandir, a temple, to house this Hanuman Murti. And it finally got completed in the summer of 2019. And Ram Dass, who hadn't left Maui in 20 years, said, I'm coming to the opening of the temple. So they flew him privately with his doctors and all the people that care for him to Taos so he could be there at the opening of his temple in July of 2019 over Guru Purnima also. And so we were there with him also when he was at the Taos temple for the opening of this mandir, which was just, I've been wanting to go to the Hanuman, the Neem Karole Baba temple for so long, and finally getting to go then too was just magical and amazing. So I love Ram Dass so much. He's like a father or grandfather figure, the energy of it. There's so much love and wisdom in his teachings. And his teacher, Maharaji, is a big teacher of mine too. And even then, just, you know, Hanuman and Krishna and Ram and Sita and Radha, all of the deities are teachers as well.
Wow.
I can only imagine what it was like to be in that energy, to like, I imagine that for some people it might even be difficult, because then you like how do you receive that much love? Like you have to open yourself up so much.
It's
It
all
must be
bhakti.
so emotional.
So powerful. When the first retreat I went to was May of 2019, and I'll be honest, I had never heard the Hanuman Chalisa. I'd never heard the Hanuman Chalisa. Krishna had told me about it, my partner. He's like, I went to this chant with Ram Dass kirtan, and they sang this chant forever. I have no idea what they were saying. It went on and on and on. Everybody seemed to know it. I don't know what it was. I was like, I don't know what that was either. And then we got to Maui, and we were actually in a hot tub with Ram Dass and a few other people, and they all started singing the Chalisa, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on right now. I've never heard this before, but they all know these Sanskrit words. It's go on and on and on. It's like a 10-minute chant, right? And then every night, Krishna Das would chant the Hanuman Chalisa for 5 nights and over again. And again, everybody knew it. And so I took my like lyrics page home.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm figuring this sucker out. And so every day I would memorize a line of the Hanuman Chalisa and teach myself. There's 40 lines. So it's 40 lines in Sanskrit. Every line is a different verse. So that when I got to the temple in July, I could sit in the Hanuman temple and chant the Hanuman Chalisa, which is what we did and what I was able to do, which was just the power, the potency, the beauty, being there with Ram Dass, who'd waited 40 years to build this temple and finally be there for it. Is just, I mean, epic. One of the best things my whole entire life. I love it so much. I feel so fortunate, so blessed. And it's all, like you said, it's all love. Like it's all bhakti. It's all pure devotion. It's all God. And that's become one of my main paths and teachers now too. I just love bhakti. So
yes.
I love.
So talk to us about Bhakti Yoga. That's a main passion of yours and a main of your teaching styles, Bhakti Yoga. What is that? And enlighten us.
Yeah, well, kind of like layman's terms, it's the path of devotion, the path of love. And like in our teacher training, Derek, like we chanted a lot. Don would chant with us, you know, and we would practice chanting, but it was kind of like in an elevated bhakti way, but it wasn't like a core component. It was just like one of the limbs and one of the branches. But you can't not chant and really give yourself to it as a meditation without feeling different and internally in your body, and even having really transcendent states. And so chanting the name of God, even just Ram, is a core component of bhakti. Saying Ram over and over again. It's mantra yoga too. It's kind of like mantra yoga meets bhakti yoga. And bhakti yoga in the path of love is like living love now. And living, and if love is God, is truth, is peace, you're living all of that now. So it's not like when I'm pure enough or when I'm good enough or when I die or when, it's not like a when I'll feel love. It's like I can generate this now within me through the efforts of my energy going to something outside of myself. That I kind of don't even understand in a logical, conscious mind kind of way. But I know, I experience when I do it, I feel good and my life is better.
I resonate with that a lot. On my personal journey, in the recent past, it's been very much a practice. I haven't had these kinds of teachings, so like even just the word bhakti is it's new, but the whole practice of devotion was really a way for me to come more to peace with myself in actually devoting my attention and my care and my love to just life that is within me. It was a way of actually practicing more love towards my body and having compassion for myself, because we are alive and I have life coursing through me. And I mean, it's like devotion to nature also, everything that's alive around us. It's so beautiful.
Totally, absolutely. It's self, it's nature, it's God, it's others, it's all of it. And you can take one pathway, like you're saying, like I started to love myself and then I was loving nature more too. Like they all lead you to the others. as well.
Yeah.
Like the more that you expand in your capacity to love, it includes everything.
Mhm.
So you can take one doorway in, but it's opening the others, I find at the same time.
They're all connected.
Yeah. And you asked me, Bianca, earlier, like in my evolution of yoga too, where it's taken me, I noticed more recently that when I started my practice, right, and this idea of spirituality, it was kind of like this otherworldly kind of understanding, maybe because I was raised Roman Catholic and there was like the idea of heaven, like something you get to out there, I don't know. Or even with like new agey stuff, it's like ascension and there's levels and there's energies or whatever somewhere, right? So I think I certainly started my spiritual practice with an understanding of that. And I've only found as I've evolved, it takes me back to the earth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And nature. And it's not about somewhere else unseen. It's like here.
Going back to the roots. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So my spiritual practice has only taken me to my love of the earth and my care for the earth in a much deeper way.
Yeah.
And another tool that you've used on your journey that I'd like to take some time to discuss now is the use of plant medicines and psychedelics to help you transcend beyond the conscious mind and explore the unconscious and beyond. Can you kind of speak to us about your entry into that and what that process has evolved into?
Yeah, well, when I mentioned before, I had a difficult experience when I was 15, that was taking LSD. So I took LSD very unprepared, without a proper set and setting, never having really even smoked pot or gotten high or having any idea of what I was about to step into. And I did it with some friends at my house, and it was, I know people say not to say that you had a bad trip, but it was a very challenging, highly traumatic, very difficult experience that shattered me. It's like a shamanic death. And so that was like being totally fractured and blown open. And that was my integration, was trying to like, what was the heck was that? And there's a lot more to reality than I've been told in my Roman Catholic upbringing. That was where the question, like, what is God? What is the nature of reality? What does it mean to be human? Started from that. And it was very traumatizing. So I then only, like, a lot of my teenage peers use drugs a lot recreationally. It's never been able to be recreational for me from that very beginning moment because it was so powerful and it always goes really deep. And so that was my initial awakening, like Ram Dass's too. His was psilocybin. Many people begin their spiritual journey through the use of psychedelics. So that was the seed that was there. And then as I got a little bit older and like college, like many of us do, slowly began to experience psychedelics in a more contained, gentler way. That was always revelatory and healing. And in Sarasota, Florida at the time, MAPS was there, which is well known now, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. Rick Doblin was based out of the town I was in, had gone to the college I was at. We went to his house. It was like part of our college experience was MAPS, psychedelic studies. My college boyfriend went on to work with him for many, many years, as many of our friends did. And then I was studying transpersonal psychology, whose founders were like Stan Groff, who also studied LSD in the 60s and created holotropic breath work. So I went from psychology to yoga teaching to transpersonal psychology. Transpersonal psychology is psychology that honors something beyond the self, peak states, psychedelics, altered states of consciousness, spirituality, like something that gives you a sense of wholeness of an other that could be many different pathways. And like, how do you use that and start from a place of like, we're all whole versus we're all broken? Like, how do we find wholeness on all these different branches? So that was part of my graduate training too. And we talked about psychedelics a little bit. So that was maybe like 2005, 2007. And I remember I was on a panel at the Association of Transpersonal Psychology. It was like, I was giving a talk on like yoga, the somatic journey to oneness, while in the next room was like the first researchers from Johns Hopkins presenting their studies with death and psilocybin were there too. And so that was beginning to happen, but I didn't see things blooming the way that they have and opening up, getting pretty cracked. It seems like psychedelics are definitely out of the box now. And they were trying to keep the lid on it pretty tight for so long. So I just continued with my psychology, my yoga. And psychedelics were there, but it wasn't anything that was at the forefront. But though having my own very powerful experiences, and then my partner being East Forest, who leads psilocybin ceremonies in his work, like his album Music for Mushrooms that came out a couple of years ago, that's been so helpful for many. And then in 2019, November of 2019, he and I together had a therapeutic ketamine experience in a friend's, like a colleague's office in Denver. He was a counselor who was doing ketamine therapy. And I experienced that and came out of it feeling like, oh, this is something that's above board that people are using to go into very deep altered states in a therapeutic way. I want to help people hold that space too and go into that space for that kind of healing. And so I connected with the Boise Ketamine Clinic, and I just did a cold call to this woman, Nicole, who's the CRNA, the nurse anesthetist that runs the clinic. I was just like, hi, this is who I am. This is what I'm interested in. This is my background. I would love to lead ketamine assisted therapy. What I would need is somebody who can write the prescription, right? Like, I'm not a doctor or a nurse. I don't work in the medical side, but I need to partner with somebody that can write the prescription that I can then do the therapy work with. And she, to her credit, was like, sure, you seem great. I'd be interested in forming this relationship. And so then I was going to get the Ketamine Training Institute had like a 5-day training in April 2020 that I was going to take. And then it got canceled, everything else. And then she and I decided to kind of create our own training together, because there's no like specific licensure. She just needs to feel good working with me, because it's really her license that could be at risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided on that. And now since then, I've been leading ketamine therapy, which has been incredibly profound. And then more again in the psilocybin realm. So that's still privately. So I'm talking now with folks in Oregon about creating a psilocybin facilitator training, which is part of the psilocybin was just decriminalized and now can be used, will be able to be used legally in clinics in Oregon. But they have to be done in clinics through trained facilitators. They need teachers to train the facilitators. So I will be one of the teachers who's training the facilitators. So this is what we're just starting to talk about. I'm trying to decide if I've got enough time to take this project on, but it's something I'm really interested in because I've been doing the work, and I know I love to teach. I love to teach teachers. Like, I have my own yoga teacher training, and I love to teach how to hold space and how to be vulnerable and what that takes to guide somebody into these really depths of their psyche that they have to be vulnerable too. And so it's powerful and exciting that this is all possible now too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so exciting, and I'm fascinated by these new tools that we're using more and more, and having this possibility to heal ourselves and to release trauma from our bodies. I'm really curious as to what kind of do you see? So I'm wondering about the people who come to you for the ketamine assisted treatments. I imagine that a lot of people, like we all, struggle with some sort of PTSD or some sort of trauma. And what is the process for running or going through this experience with somebody? What is that like?
There's different ways to do it, but essentially, I kind of liken it to guiding someone into Shavasana. You teach yoga now, Bianca?
I do practice it, yeah.
Yeah. or like a yoga nidra state, those deep meditation states. And so because I have this background in meditation, in yoga, and creating and holding deep spiritual space, I'm not super clinical, right? Like I have the clinical experience and some clinical background, but I'm not bound by like clinical boundaries or even like fear of licensure of like, well, I can't do this because I've got to do that. That's because I'm outside the box, right?
Yeah.
And so I bring to it a lot of my yoga presence, where we're in a room, the lighting is important, the sense important. I'm going to stage and use Palo Santo. We'll pull a card. I set up an altar also. Yeah. The music is important. The quality of sound of the music too is really important. And then helping them feel, I work in groups. So when I'm in a group, I work with individuals too, but in the group setting, it's creating the container for everybody together. And then they all have the different levels of medicine, and then helping them to relax into their body, like you're guiding into a shavasana in a way, maybe even using a body scan. And then while they're in that space, everybody's quiet then for usually like 45 minutes to an hour. And if I intuitively feel like something wants to be said, I might say something, but a lot of the times I'm not saying anything because everyone's working individually with what we call their inner healing intelligence, right? Like inside all of us is the innate move towards wholeness and healing. And I don't know what that looks like for you, but I can create a space where that comes up from within you. So I don't want to interfere in your journey. Like, I don't want to go in and say, like, I'm not going to direct it. I'm going to allow it to be directed internally while kind of like holding it like this. And if you need help, I'm definitely going to help you, but I don't have an agenda for everybody. So I'm holding the space for everybody. If I can feel like something needs to happen or be said, I will. And then about like 60 to 75 minutes in, then I begin to bring everybody back out. Again, very much like you're coming out of Shavasana, really slowly grounding, breathing, slowly beginning to move and connect, and then holding space for the group as they've returned more to share what came up for them.
Wow.
And then processing that in the group, because we learn so much from each other. So that would be like a group ketamine experience.
And do people come back, or usually one time they kind of get what they wanted?
Yeah, in the groups, it's a series. Like we'll do a group that starts together and we'll do 4 or 6 all together over like 2 weeks or 4 weeks, something like that. So it's a group that has multiple together. And then with the individuals, most of them will do a minimum of 3, sometimes more. And then when we're working one-on-one, I have a lot more time to go into somebody's trauma, to go into their work. They share a lot more because we're in a one-on-one setting. And then that's where, when I started to do that work, I was like, oh, you need to get trained more on how to deal with trauma. And so I'm doing the somatic experiencing training so I can facilitate that place better, because everybody has trauma, no matter how high functioning and quote unquote normal you seem on the outside, you've got it in there. And if you really want to go forward and mature, spiritually evolve, you have to work through your trauma.
Oh yeah.
And I've been learning a lot from one of my mentors, Dr. Gabor Mate, in regards to trauma. From your learnings with Peter Levine, I think you may have talked about Bessel van der Kolk as well earlier, or I'm sure you're familiar with his work. What are you learning about trauma and how to help yourself and others in that sphere?
One of the best things to learn is to recognize the signs of it within myself and in others when it comes up, because it's sneaky. It can be really sneaky. It can look like, oh, I'm just quiet, right? Or really, I'm totally shut down. I'm not even here. I'm completely dissociated. Or that person's an aggressive, narcissistic asshole. And it's like, oh no, they're just in their trauma state. Like they're hyperactivated, right? So one of the easiest, best, most beneficial things is being able to recognize it. And then you can have so much more compassion for others and yourself, and then neutralizing, you know, instead of like continuing to push, you know, like that argument with your partner where you're just going around and around and around and around and saying the same things over and over again. It's like, oh, let's put the brakes on here. Like, we're both in our trauma states. Nothing productive is happening. We're just hurting each other over and over again. So resourcing, like recognizing when a state has happened, it's usually an up or a down, and then giving the space or the tool that needs to happen to slow down and get neutral again, and then re-engage. And like with the work with Peter Levine, how it works through the body, it's sensation based. So like as soon as I notice maybe the heaviness in my chest, that tightness, like, okay, let's just stop and let's be with that and feel it. And what does it want to do? And it's pendulating too. It's going into those intense spots and then grounding it into like feet, felt sense, wholeness, flow, and then going back to what's tough. So you're not like re-traumatizing, right? Like, let's deeply go into the trauma again and talk all about it, but like bit by bit, kind of diffusing it so that it can expand too in your capacity to hold and feel more of those feelings that before felt really overwhelming. Like, I can't even go there because I'm going to get overwhelmed. You can deepen the capacity to do that. And then, like in yoga, you know, I experienced early on doing a Vipassana training, the 10-day silent retreat, where when I would sit and work through those samskaras, those like aches, you know, like let's say in my body and you don't respond to them, the instructions in a Vipassana training is you sit for an hour at a time, you close your eyes, you don't open your eyes, and you don't move. And to not respond to that impulse to like move and shift causes you to sit with these like, my knee is aching, oh my God, all the sensations there, but you don't respond to it. And eventually it shifts away and it dissolves. Like, if I don't respond, it's going to dissolve and go away most often. When I did that, I noticed that my own, like my flexibility was much deeper. My stretches were a lot deeper through sitting in meditation and not moving. My flexibility in yoga got deeper. It was very interesting. So not responding, allow energy to dissipate, cause these samskaras, these impressions to go away. So similarly in the somatic work, when we can sit with the sensation, be present with it, I'll actually allow it and turn towards it versus shutting it off, shutting it down, it's dissipating too. And I feel like when an energy is moved through and discharged, it's gone for good. We're constantly creating more karma and new samskaras and new imprints, but we get quicker and more efficient at untying those knots because we can sense it a lot quicker. Like feeling like, oh, I'm out of balance happens more the more in flow and in tune you get with yourself, the more you've cleaned stuff up. But a lot of people are walking around like, I don't know, this image of like, did you watch The Never-Ending Story? And there's the rock creature like that, just like big rocks who don't feel anything.
Okay, I get the picture.
And
it's
that's
true.
normal.
Many
that's
people are like that.
Is.
Do not feel robot mode. I just need to get what I need to get done and just focus on that. And just we'll put the rest aside because I can't deal with it right now. There's definitely a lot of that.
There's so much. And that's all trauma. Like that's all this survival mechanism. Like it's too painful to feel. It's too painful to feel. So how do you make somebody feel safe and slowly beginning to feel and slowly peeling back the layers? And it's actually in the body. Deep breaths, moving sensations.
Returning to wholeness.
Yeah.
So You've been on so many wonderful journeys in this lifetime that you've lived here. And they would all have been for naught if you listened to that voice of fear. If you would have found yourself on the road of the crossroads of should and must, listen to the must of society, parents, rather than the shoulds of those people, rather than your must, like your inner calling, your knowing, your intuition. And so many people on their paths get stuck at that point, at that crossroads, and they stay stuck in the mud on that path of should, rather than listening to their inner calling, following that voice. What is your advice for a hero on that path that are feeling that calling, but fear has got them stuck? How did you move forward? How did you push forward? And what has been your relationship with fear? What does that look like?
Yeah, from an early age, I didn't have guidance, right? Like nobody was telling me, I expect this from you. This is what you're going to do with your life. This is how we do things. So I had to figure it out for myself. And because of that, I learned how to trust my heart and my inner being. Like in that example of the first story where I was like, how do I know what to do with the rest of my life? Well, it should be to do the thing that you like. Okay, I'll do the thing that I like. And when fear arises, like, well, what are people going to think about me making that decision? That seems crazy. My litmus test, or what I tell myself, is if I know in my heart where my intentions come from, like if I know where the motivation is coming from, I could care less what other people think about it, because I know the root truth of the intention for the desire or the goal or whatever comes from here. I don't care what other people think, because they don't know. But I know it's true for me, and nobody could take that away. Like, you can't make me doubt my heart. You can make me doubt my mind.
The heart knows.
The heart knows. So if I know that my heart knows, period, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
What is great words of wisdom. And I'm looking for another last wisdom here. Throughout all the highs and lows of your journey, what would you say has been the greatest life lesson that you've learned on that path that you feel called to share with Bianca and I and all the listeners today?
My greatest life lesson: don't take things so seriously. Humans take things far too seriously. We take ourselves far too seriously. It's not that big of a deal. It kind of doesn't matter. Relax.
Yeah.
Don't be so serious.
If you can laugh when you're in the middle of something, I feel like that's ultimate, like, releasing of tension. But it's such a practice. It's a powerful one. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
We think things matter a lot and are really important. And they're pretty much not on the grand scheme of things. Just relax. It's fine. It's all fine. We're all going to get there. You're not behind. You're not losing. We're all in this together. It's perfect. It's all good. You're a winner too.
Yeah. So to close every episode, we ask each guest final two questions, and we've got to that point, even though I feel like I could speak with you forever, but I want to be respectful of your time. And here come these final two questions. In 3 words, how would you describe the experience you were having on this earth?
Grateful, loving, powerful.
Grateful, loving, and powerful. What an experience. And that brings us to the final question. I'm going to play with some time. I believe in our hearts, we're all magicians, and I'm going to transport us into the future. I'm going to transport us in the future, and we're going to be alongside an 85-year-old Radha. Who is that 85-year-old? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What does your life look like? And what is the legacy that you've left on this planet?
So 85-year-old Radha, I would love my children to be there and my partner, and I would love for them to have some grandkids. And I would love to be on the ocean, out like on a deck or a patio or a balcony. And I don't know, my legacy is like I've helped people know themselves more and reconnect to the earth more and reconnect to God and self and earth, community, reconnection in whatever ways possible that I can help myself and all of us learn to do that would be what I want.
It's real special. And I want you to stay with this 85-year-old Radha for just a moment longer. I want you to feel her in your heart and picture her inside. And I'm going to bring us back. I'm going to bring us all back to the infinite now, this present moment. And that 85-year-old Radha, she sends you a message. What does she whisper in your ear?
She says, "You got
it." You got it. That's right. This is it right here. You got it. We got it.
Yeah. Oh, thank
you so much, Radha. It's been an honor and a pleasure. This has been such a beautiful conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Thanks, Bianca.
For people wanting to connect with you more, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram, Marisa Radha Weppner, MarisaRadhaWeppner. And I've got a website, marisarada.com. You can go to. Those are probably like the main avenues of outreach. I'm here in Boise, Idaho. So if you're in the area, you can send me a message too. But I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. So to close every episode, we bring our fist in to the winner circle, digital fist down to the process. We're in it. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So nice connecting. Thank you.